Hey everyone, it's marabelleblue with the Unfiltered Interview Edition of my Unfiltered channel. I am so excited. Today we have Santana Jones. I am going to be interviewing him. We're going to be asking deep questions, and he's going to share with us what happens on the Sparring with Santana, Late Nights with Santana is, and I'm going to read it off here. He platforms Late Nights with Santana, Sparring with Santana, and Brunch with My Creator. I didn't know about Brunch with My Creator, so we have to talk about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
No,
welcome, Santana, to this interview portion. You are actually the first interview of 2025. So, I'm happy about that.
absolutely. Listen, I want to start off by saying it's a pleasure, right? Thank you. Thank you for having me on your platform. Thank you for giving me a little bit of time to actually speak with you. I've watched a couple of different of your unfiltered unfiltered podcasts. And the first one that I saw, I was absolutely amazed, right? Not only by the overall production and quality, but also the actual substance of what you're doing. So when I was given this opportunity, I was really excited, and I'm here. I'm open. I'm honored to be the first person of 2025. Let's make it a good one.
Yes, we are going to make it a good one. I think despite of everything that's going on in our world today, you were on live earlier, and I want to talk a little bit about that in between this episode because it was pretty intense. I mean, if you want to talk about it now, I would like for the audience to know who Santana Jones is. How did this platform you come about, and just everything else in between?
Yeah, no. So I'll start off just a little bit of a background about myself, right? I am 38 years old. I am from South Carolina. I live in Washington State now. I've been here for almost 3 years, right? And I'm someone who has always been pretty opinionated. And I grew up, of course, in a black barbershop, right? And debates it's the substance of who we are, right? And for me, I've always taken in a lot of information and been willing to share that information. But back in 2016, something super interesting happened, right? Donald Trump came and took the world by storm, right? And at that time, again, I was in South Carolina, and I made a decision like, hey, we don't really talk about politics. We don't tell people who we vote for, which it was a complete change. But I didn't vote for Trump, right? But I didn't advocate for anything. I just thought like, there's no way that this guy could be our next president. And then he won, and we lived through 4 years of a Trump administration. And so in 2020, I said to myself, okay, I know for a fact that I have to actually make sure that not only am I not voting for Trump, but I'm doing a little bit more. And so I talked to my family and I talked to my friends, and we had the conversation around voting, right? And Joe Biden won, and it was okay. But then 2024 rolled around, and I realized that I hadn't done enough, right? And so I started to do something I'd never done before. When Kamala Harris was actually selected to be the party nominee, I dedicated myself more so to amplifying her voice and the voice and the platform of the Democratic Party, which meant I started off just phone banking, right? Calling people, phone banking, and reaching people. And then I got on TikTok, and I would watch other creators and listen to them talk and listen to the things that they did, and I really enjoyed it. But I started to panel, right? Enter other people's spaces, actually be a part of other people's spaces. And I got an opportunity to speak in front of a couple of people, and I realized that people actually enjoy what I had to say because they started following me, which was super interesting. And from that point, I got the opportunity to turn on my camera. And that's when I started to stream and not only phone bank, but I would stream the phone banking. So that was my thing, right? While I was actually calling people, I would be on live, and people could see how I was going about, advocating. From that point, I've continued to grow and expand my platform, the things that I do, and how I choose to amplify and use my voice. And for me now, it's about multiple things, and I say this all the time, but it's about information, education, and entertainment. Right? There's certain
Right,
aspects
right.
of all of that. So that's where I am today. I'm trying to use my platform to make sure that I'm battling misinformation, disinformation, while having substance, entertainment, and also helping people. So.
One thing that I will say that really intrigued me was when you were talking about your interest in history,
Mhm,
specifically the time of World War II, even
mhm.
beforehand. What sparked your interest? Was there anything specific that really honed in for you when it came to that time period?
Yeah, so no, for me, I've always had a huge uh, interest in it. I've always been a nerd, right, in a certain aspect, and so I've always enjoyed history. I've always enjoyed learning and things along those lines. But I took 4 years of German, right? Took 4 years of German. I took 3 years of French, and so learning more about German history was such a huge thing for me. But then also just understanding like the events that led up to World War I, World War II, just moving forward where we are today, and all of those things. So that time frame specifically is super interesting, just because it's one of the most devastating time frames in the history of the world. But there was so much that came out of it that still impacts us today. And I don't think a lot of people really understand how history continues to resonate far past that time frame. And so um, I always say, and I know people say the same thing, but if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And that's what we're living through.
Exactly. Exactly. And it cracks me up because on one of your sparring with Santana's was which time period was better? 1933 Germany or 2025? And it's amazing because I'm listening to these people that come up and they actually answer the question. They're not like, where is the critical thinking in what happened during that time period in comparison to thinking that that was okay compared to now? What goes through your mind when you're hearing everyone trying to justify, well, not everyone, but people who support convict Trump and Ilanka Muck, that's what I call him. I know you've seen it in the chat, but to support something so insane and to answer that question, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, so a couple of different things, right? The first thing that I know is that when with hosting these type of lives, anyone that's willing to come up is, for the most part, firm in their beliefs, right or wrong. They believe what they believe, and they're willing to put it on the line and defend it. But
Right, right.
when I have those like that background and that question, it's misleading on purpose, right? The reason
Hmm.
why I say that is because it says 1933 Germany or 2025 United States of America, and they say, "Oh, it has to be 2025 because, the Holocaust and they weren't killing people." And I'm like, "Oh, you do understand that in 1933 Germany, that's not what they were doing." Right? It was the setup to what actually happened. And drawing those correlations, like I don't say stuff just to say it, right? There's a lot of similarities, and you can infer a lot of things just based off of how things have happened and how things continue to happen. And so you mentioned the fact that like they don't critically think, and how do they critically, like they don't it's a lot of people that come up and they're willing to speak. They have a certain mindset. They have, I hate to say it like this, but limited knowledge. And
Hmm.
either they're unwilling to actually, one, critically think, or two, do the research to actually find out if they're verifying, if they have real information, if they're being misled, things along those lines. So whenever I do that, it's a stress test on them to see how much they know and how much they're willing to actually prove what they believe. But more than anything, I try to hold up a comparison, right? That's the point of what I'm doing. My comparison is this person who has this belief versus myself when I have this belief, who has
Hmm.
information, who has facts. Let's run it down and let's see how they stack up against each other.
Let's talk about today's live, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
And the conversations that ensued. I could tell you on my end, I'm going off because I just cannot understand how they don't hear themselves speaking. Especially when you're asking specific questions. And even at times that I'm listening to you ask a question, I'm like, he's going somewhere with that question because I'm learning too. Like, I'm not a political expert. I did not take political science in college. I was more business management, communications major, treading on psychology because I really liked that field. And I say to myself, he's going somewhere with these lines of questioning. Like, are you 10 steps ahead? Are you also playing chess when it comes to these questions? Do you anticipate their answers?
Yes, right. As far as anticipation, it's funny. So one thing that I do before I host any of these is I do a lot of research, right? I do a lot of reading. I listen to a lot of interviews. I'm constantly trying to take in as much information as possible. And when I take in that information, I don't only take in information from like reading or taking information from AP News, NPR, things like that, but I go to Fox News, right? I watch Fox News. I watch Joe Rogan. I watch all of the places where opposition would get their information from because I know they're not going to actually fact check it. They wait for certain orders, and so I like to get the information beforehand and break down the information that's being communicated out. Now, with that being said, as well, I talk to so many people; they all parrot the same lines, right? It's not that they come in and
Yes.
I will say there's a guy today who had a reasoning that I had not heard before, and I told him I said it wasn't far fetched, it wasn't completely off basis. I had never heard that before, and it was interesting. But for the most part, it's the same thing over and over and over and over. And so for me, it's all about critical thinking, right? It's all about stress testing the certain things that they say and they believe, and then seeing if there's consistencies or inconsistency. I'll give you an example. There was a guy today who was complaining about or was saying that he was perfectly fine with what Elon Musk was doing. Right. He said, Elon Musk, we're good. I'm good with that. He's a billionaire. He's doing this, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
And then in the next breath, he said, now, if you want to talk about a billionaire that's affecting politics or the government, then George Soros. And I said, no, that's an inconsistency. You can't say that you're okay with one billionaire actually interfering with politics in the United States government, but you're not okay with another billionaire doing the same thing. Like you can't have those type of inconsistencies. So for me, it's
Hmm.
about forcing critical thinking, stress testing their beliefs, and then even more so being prepared because it's not original. They're not original, and they don't really think things through.
No, and it's funny. I was watching Brandy Lee. She does
Hmm.
interviews sometimes with Midas Touch. She's a psychologist, or she may be a psychiatrist. She spoke specifically about the dangers of convict coming back into the White House. But she also spoke about his followers. And this is what she
Hmm.
said: they have narcissistic symbiosis, which
Hmm.
refers to the intense attraction between individuals with narcissistic traits
Hmm.
and those with borderline personality disorder, also known
Hmm.
as PBD.
Hmm.
So the relationship is marked by attachment wounds, emotional dysregulation, and disassociation.
Hmm.
Do you hear that a lot in his followers? Do you think this is what's going on? Because I've this is the first time that I've ever heard of that. And I'm like, oh my God, like she's answering the question of why? Like, why is this going on?
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, right? Because in so many instances, you see his supporters that they want to live vicariously through him, right? Whether
Yes.
it's
Hmm.
being able to say the things that he says without repercussion, do the things that he does without consequences, or they want to be a billionaire They want to be, have power. It's so many of those things, and they want to project those things. And so those traits of Donald Trump and this administration are traits that resonate with them because it's things that they don't have, and in a lot of instances, they either wish they had or understand that like this is the closest they're going to ever be to it. And so it's something that they know that they can't control whether or not they ever become president or ever become a billionaire, but they feel like they had a hand in someone becoming president or helping this billionaire. And so they get that actual pleasure out of that type of relationship. And even more so, I think there's a sunken cause, right, with Trump supporters, because they've made Donald Trump, MAGA, like this entire thing, a part of who they are, right? And
Right.
it's so
Mhm.
ingrained in as far as who they are that now they have to do and say whatever it takes to continue to justify everything that's happening.
It's frightening because it takes me back to I don't know if you got a chance to see, because I started doing the history of, and like whatever came up. The first history I did was about grifters with Miss Cleo, and like how that
Call me
whole
now.
right, with that whole
Who's the
how that
father of the
whole
baby?
grift.
Yeah.
I have that in the video. And then when all of the election stuff started going on, I said, you know what? I'm going to do the history of Jim Jones and comparing Jim Jones to Donald Trump.
That's a
And
good
as
one.
I
That's a
was
good one.
doing my research, I mean, let me tell you something. I keep cards. I know it's there somewhere, but
Hmm.
I got into like these index cards
Hmm.
and I write everything down. And I probably had like almost 20 cards. And I was disturbed after all was said and done.
Hmm.
Disturbed in doing research, disturbed in doing the comparison, disturbed at the end for Jim Jones followers, having to view clips, seeing what happened, the aftermath without filter
Hmm.
when they drank the Kool Aid.
Hmm.
And that's something that's going to live within me for the rest of my life because they did not know until that moment.
Hmm.
It was beyond a FAFO.
Hmm.
It was beyond that. And I think
Hmm.
to myself, how do they not see? Okay, you know what? The reality is that there may never be another Kool Aid. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But what will be the downfall for them? I'm sure that they're going to experience it individually.
Yeah, when you talk about Trump supporters, and like what's the line of demarcation for them, it has to be what you just said at the end, an individual experience. Because I've spoken with so many people, and anyone that was willing to support Donald Trump prior to the election or still supports him today, it's solely based off of me, right?
Yes.
And being able to have something in place that benefits them specifically is super important. So the only way that you see anyone who supports Donald Trump having their Kool-Aid moment is when they're personally impacted, when it's
Hmm.
farmers losing their farms, when it's veterans losing their benefits, when it's the elderly losing access to Medicaid, right? Those actual things are the only things that will give his supporters that moment of clarity where they understand that I messed up. Now, the tough part about that is this democracy that we have, this social experiment, this election process and everything, it's a group project, right? So
Right.
when these individual farmers who voted for Donald Trump actually lose their farms, well, that doesn't just impact them, that impacts all of us, because then we lose direct access to the goods that said farms provide. When these
Hmm.
veterans, when they lose their benefits, well, that impacts everyone, because we're not just talking about veterans that voted for Trump. We're talking about veterans that didn't support Donald Trump who actively need and rely on those different benefits that are being cut. When we talk about the older generation that voted for Trump and they're going to lose access to Medicaid, I mean, we talk about cutting a social safety net that so many Americans actually depend on. And so that moment of clarity, that Kool-Aid moment that Trump supporters are going to experience, we're all going to feel it together at the same time. And that's the
Mhm.
tough part.
Listening to the guy that was on your live today and basically trying to throw his weight around, talking about how he was taking great joy. Oh, the libs are crying and I'm
Hmm.
taking great joy. And
Hmm.
you're like, well, you're a liberal too. What makes you think that you're going to be exempt? And that's the frightening part
Hmm.
because it is, see, they talk about trickle down economics that never really happened,
Hmm.
but the trickle down effect to me is real when other people make these type of decisions on a bigger scale that affects all of us in
Hmm.
one form or another.
Yeah, no. And so it's funny, right? He was so invested in, and I've seen certain people who are invested in, making the libs cry, right? And the reason why I kept
Mhm.
saying that is because, and I say this often, when people come in and they're like, "Oh, liberals, liberals, liberals," and I'm like, "You know that you're a liberal," and they like, "Oh, I'm not a liberal. I'm not." The definition, the actual definition of a liberal is someone who believes in individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise, which is capitalism. And every one of them believes in those things. So you're a liberal. And I try to explain this to them, but they're so caught up on one, owning the libs, and two, these titles. But again, the problem that I have with the guy today is that it's not that he had a stance of like, oh, I want to own the libs. He didn't understand that one, this isn't sports, right? It's not teams, right? It's not
Right.
liberals versus conservatives. I mean, you
Mhm.
can always talk about like elections and how elections are divisive. Yes, because you're telling people pick a side. Which side are you going to
Mhm.
stand on? But then after elections, and this is the problem that I've had with Donald Trump. After elections, it doesn't matter who wins, you then become the president of the United States of America, not the president of every red state or the president of every blue state. No, no, no. You govern the entire country. And
Mhm.
when you govern the entire country, you have to actually do things to actively benefit the entire country. Right? That's what,
Right.
regardless of like political affiliation and then you pushing any principles or idea that your party may have or whatever. Like, okay, elections have consequences. You get to actually implement your ideas, but the basis of your ideas should always be it's going to be beneficial to the American public. And that's the question that I kept going back to today with the guy like, hey, okay, the Republican Party has all the power. What are they going to do to actually make life better for the everyday American? And he couldn't see
Mhm.
past, oh, I get to drink lib tears, which is a weird, weird thing.
Yeah, I know why I asked this question because it's for somebody specific that you had on your live.
Hmm.
Was there ever a time in one of your lives where you perhaps was disturbed by the rhetoric of Trump supporters? There was a live maybe a week ago. And I'll never forget this specific thing because I think it had to do with Gaza and
Hmm.
Israel. And I remember your face, like you stood quiet and you just looked at him and you said, "You're a fucking piece of shit," and just took him off. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with people? How are they okay?
Yeah. No, I mean, so I remember that one. And to be honest, right, when it comes to certain people that are Zionists, right, call it what it is, their beliefs are so rooted in their religious beliefs. And for me, it's
Mm,
like I don't like to combat people religious beliefs because it doesn't necessarily live in facts, right? It's rooted simply in who they are and how firm they're willing to believe in said things, right? We both know like justification of a genocide is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And so
exactly.
like pushing back on those types of things, like you can talk through those and you can go round and round in a circle. So when those people do that, that doesn't shock me. So that wouldn't even be
Hmm.
it. The most shocking thing, and this happened recently, and I posted it on my page. It was with a guy, I think his name was like Levito or whatever, and
Oh,
he the way that he professed his love and undying and unwavering support for Donald Trump blew me away,
yes.
right? And it's more so because I tell people this all the time. I don't care about political affiliations. I also don't care about politicians. Like, I don't hold any politician to such a high level that they're above being criticized.
Hmm.
And I don't care if there's any politician, if they commit crimes. I don't care if there's an R or a D or an I or whatever by their name. They should be held accountable. And
Right.
for him to actually worship at the altar of Donald Trump, unlike anyone that I had ever seen before, right? Because you talk about Trump supporters and how they have to twist themselves in a pretzel. He wasn't even trying to twist himself in a pretzel. It's just he was saying if Donald Trump did it, it's okay. And that was the most mind blowing experience for me, to talk to him for about 20 or 30 minutes. And no, he wasn't disputing facts. He wasn't disputing evidence. He didn't say this didn't happen. He didn't say that's not true. He was willing to listen and accept the information that I gave him, but every time I
Yes.
gave him the information, he reverted back to, well, it's okay because it's Donald Trump. And
Hmm.
that blew my mind.
I think he's well famous for that. It's like he would be one of the minions of Jim Jones if
Hmm.
he was around in that
Hmm.
time. I think people lack, I say, critical thinking skills, but I think what's even more disturbing is refusing to learn about history. I
Hmm.
did an interview that I'm actually not an interview, but kind of like a conversation piece with a long time friend of mine. I think I've known since 2002.
Hmm.
And we were talking about black culture and like his point of view being a black man, because I'm
Hmm.
not a black man, you know.
Hmm.
I wanted him to share his point of view on black culture and why is it that we have black brothers and sisters refusing to learn about history? Why is it that history all of a sudden has become irrelevant? I don't want to learn about that, or I don't need to learn about that. I heard a Trump supporter saying that. I just need to know about the here and now. We're talking about a guy in his 20s who
Hmm.
voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Why wouldn't you want to learn about black culture and black history and people who made the United States of America, who invented things, who were involved in politics, who did break barriers for being a person of color at that time when it was much more difficult?
Yeah. S- So the thing that I've learned about that is it more so has to do with people are selfish, right? People are selfish, and a lot of people, if things don't directly pertain to them, then it doesn't matter, right? And so when you talk about people who live in the here and now, and you don't want to talk about things from the past that don't quote unquote directly impact you today, that they're not prevalent today, they're not something that's going to put money in your pocket or anything like that, then it doesn't matter, right? But for those people that think that way, they're short-sighted, right? And the reason why I say that is because they don't understand that the history of this country and the history of where we've been to where we are, it's so small, right? There's people that like to believe that, racism doesn't exist, or we are 150 years away from Jim Crow or segregation. And the simple fact of the matter is there are still people alive today that actually live through segregation, who actually dealt with those things. And not only is it black people alive that lived through segregation and dealt with that, but there are white people as well. And those people pass on those thoughts, ideas, and things to their children, who pass it down to their children. And I know you can't say, well, oh, everything is still happening today, but there is still a sense of understanding, and there's still a sense of dealing with the past. And the thing that bothers me about some Black people is Black Americans don't have a full understanding of their history, right? I mean, you can talk about other Black people who are, Ethiopian, Nigerian, Somalian, like all of them, they have an understanding of who they are, their culture, their past, their history, their ancestors. And Black Americans don't have that. And so when we get some type of semblance of being able to learn our history and learn our past, and you turn away from that, that's like one of the worst things that you can do, because the people that help build this country, our Black people that help build this country, are the people whose shoulders that we should stand on today to make our country and our world better for the people coming after us. And if you're unwilling to actually understand and learn about the sacrifice and the challenges and the achievements and just everything that people who came before us did, then one, how can you actually grow to be a better person? But two, how can you actually do anything that's going to be beneficial to anyone else outside of yourself? But again, people who look at it that way, they're only selfish. And if it's not putting a dollar in their pocket, they don't care. Not understanding that if they actually took time to learn and do more, they would put even more money in their pocket. They don't get it.
No, they don't. And that's the sad part, because I think if there was a way for all of us to work together, and I know that there are people who won't even entertain that, knowing they voted for Donald Trump.
Mhm.
There are people who are not in forgiveness land. And I understand that, because I'm not a very forgiving person either.
Mhm.
But I think the issues are these labels that we keep putting on each other: libs, right, Democrat,
Mhm.
Republican. Was there something positive that you learned about a Trump supporter? Was there anything that you took positive out of one of your lives?
Yeah, no. So for me, so you mentioned a couple of different things, right? Because I do different things, right? I do sparring with
Mhm.
Santana. I do late nights with Santana. I do brunch with my creator. And it's funny because the people that I care most about in my life, they have their preference, right? And their preference is always late nights. They prefer late nights because late nights is the platform where not only is there civility, but there is an opportunity to actually communicate and actually learn from each other and grow, versus sparring. That's a debate. That's a debate. You're trying to win a
Right.
debate, right? But late nights, there's an opportunity to share information, share resources, share ideas, push back on a school of thought, and then grow from it. And so on late nights, I've had many Trump supporters who came up and shared information and stories, and we were able to actually go back and forth. And so, as far as like learning something specifically, no, but learning about them and what actually drives them, yes, right. And getting an opportunity to really boil things down to, we're all just people, right? We're all just people
Mhm.
who want the best for ourselves, our family, for the people that we love, and who's just trying to live life, right? And so I learned that a lot of Trump supporters, yes, I can say they're selfish, right? But also there's a lot of them who don't really understand how politicians, period, use us as cannon fodder, right? They use the American people to get what they actually want. And it's not necessarily about picking someone who's going to be amazing or picking someone that's going to change the world. At times, it could be as simple as picking someone who's just going to do the right thing by the American citizens. And when they don't understand voting interests, like they don't understand that you can go see how politicians vote. I don't care what politicians say. I genuinely
Mhm.
don't. You can look at their voting record and you can see what they really mean and where their interests lie. Like you can see who donates money to them and how much money they actually donate. So you can really see where their interest lies. And so I think the one of the best things that I've gotten from multiple Trump supporters from late night is them changing the way that they think and saying,
Hmm.
okay, I am going to go look stuff up. I am going to question why this is happening. So they're not saying, oh, I'm not going to vote Republican. Oh, I'm not going to support Donald Trump. But them saying, I'm going to question things. That's all. That's all. Because once you start questioning things, then you start
Hmm.
thinking and you use critical thinking. And then it's reason. And
Right.
then it's like, hey, this doesn't sound right. And this doesn't sound right. Oh, this doesn't line up. Oh, this doesn't line up. Why am I putting my vote here? That doesn't make sense. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been the best thing that I've gotten from like any Trump supporters on late night is when they actually take those steps to start to educate themselves and to critically think, and then they just go from there.
Now, finally, what does this is like the typical interview question.
Mhm.
What does Santana Jones' life look like within the next 5 years?
That's a great question, and that's something that I have been thinking a lot about lately. So I have a few things coming, right? One thing that
Hmm.
I'm not ready to announce yet, but something really big in the near future. So that, but even more, I really want to continue to grow, and I want to do more for people. Right. This is a conversation I've had with the closest people around me. And I've been given an opportunity to utilize my voice to benefit myself. All right. And I want to make sure that I'm using my voice to benefit others as well. So advocating for the voiceless, people who don't have an opportunity to say what's on their mind or be able to speak in front of thousands of people or whatever the case may be. I want to be able to do that, but then also lift up different things, right? One of the most fulfilling things that I've done recently is spending a week and hosting Athena, who is a great creator, but us raising
Hmm.
money to actually help donate to different genocides that are happening around the world, right? And so
Right, right.
I want to be able to do things more like that where I'm reaching people, I'm helping people, I'm pushing people to critically think. I've thought about the idea of possibly running for a political office, right? So that's
Hmm.
not off the table either. But the biggest thing that I want to do, and I'm really focusing on, is pushing my platform past where it is, pushing it past TikTok, right? Pushing it past TikTok, pushing it past YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, pushing it past social media and pushing it into a place where I'm able to really connect and meet people. I've started the process of meeting with actual politicians, right? So I'm actively engaging in trying to connect with politicians and trying to not only get FaceTime with them, but to be able to give them opportunity to share their message and then challenge them to be better for the American people. So that's over the next 5 years. That's what you're going to see from me. You're going to see more of me expanding past sitting in front of a screen and talking to a random Trump supporter to doing things that could benefit everyone and other people's lives.
Hannah, I am so excited for you, and you have my absolute support. I know
Thank
that
you.
you don't know me from anywhere other than what we see on social media. I will be cheering and advocating for you. I appreciate you taking
Thank
the
you.
time out and doing this. I am extremely humbled, and I can't
Thank you.
say thank you enough for coming on and sharing. I feel like I'm just coming back into the fold of everything that I was doing prior. And a lot of people know through my coaching channel challenges that I've had in the past. And I'm just so happy to be here and be building a family with all of you and that you are allowing me in. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing. I will be putting all of the links down below where you can follow Santana and you can support him. And thank you again for being on this Unfiltered Interview Edition.
Yeah, no, listen again, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's the first interview that I've done in the format of my platform. So it's been really exciting. It's been a lot of fun. I am honored to be a part of what you're doing. And, I would love for us to do more together in the future. And if you ever have anything that
Yes.
you have, just let me know. All right. You know how to get in contact with me. So I would love to do more with
Yes,
you.
I absolutely will. And hopefully, I will have the nerve or the balls rather to get on one of your late nights, because every time that I get on, it's like, damn, the panel's already boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
soon, soon, soon. But
Absolutely.
thank you again. Thank you for doing this. And with all that being said, if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. Please support and spread the word so that this channel can grow. Also follow Santana Jones. All of his links will be down below. This is Marabelle Blue signing off. And always remember, be good to yourself, be good to each other, and most importantly, take care of you. Bye, everybody.
Peace.